So now, next speaker, Tom Williams, WA1MBA, to tell us about progress on a quadrupler for 40 to 50 gigahertz.
Okay, thanks, John. Nice audio system we've got here. How you copying me, Fred? Pretty good, Tom. I'm going to try the speech processor I just got. Okay, Tom, go ahead. So how was that? Pretty good. Not quite as sharp and clear as your regular voice. Okay, it looks like forward, backward, and that didn't do it. Point. Do I have the right box? On top.
Forward, back, and laser pointer.
That's what I just did. Do I point at the screen? Do I point at this?
Oh, it's not plugged in. It walked with the last percentage computer. John?
Oh, there's a little dongle thing?
Yeah, the little dongly thing.
While we're waiting, last night I realized I didn't have any backgrounds on my slides, and everybody's using backgrounds, and they're very pretty and work out nicely. So I found this picture I took a while ago of a nearly full moon during the daytime. One time when I was first in one of my nice big jobs, I had my group meeting in the morning, and I said, Americans are just not all that clever. Some people don't even know you can see the moon during the day. And my secretary said to me, "What?" And I marched her outside, and I pointed up. I said, "See that big white thing? Wow." So I told my brother that, and ever since, every once in a while, there's a very beautiful blue sky and a blue moon, a moon in the sky during the day. So he gives me a call, and I went out and took a couple of pictures, and I got that one. I got some nicer ones, but this one served the purpose of a nice background. Anyway.
Have you ever thinking that maybe she was pulling your leg?
There are a number of reasons to believe that she wasn't. Yeah, let's leave it there. Okay, a couple of years ago at MUD, I said, let's do something about the bands. Let's get more beacons on. Maybe we should make something that makes it easy to make a beacon for 47. So I wanted to do that. So that's really what, if you read my short paper from a few years ago, that's what that was. So this talk, I'll give a little bit of background on why we're doing this, some information on the design, the results of the construction, and what the next steps are. A couple of years ago, Dave Sumner was retiring from being the CEO of ARRL, and he took a couple of us aside and said, "Hey, by the way, guys, this new 5G stuff is going to start knocking the door on your upper bands." So we said, "Oh, what should we do?" So started working on a quadrupler to take the 10 to 12 gigahertz range and put it into the 40 to 50 gigahertz range, with primary interest in getting something at 47088 beacon frequency. That's really what I was focusing on. And that next year, after I did this, the FCC actually started to announce that there was a potential 5G, not 5 gigahertz, 5G telephone band going to be introduced at 35 gigs, which is great because 35 gigs is nowhere near any ham bands, and they have to fight with the military because it's a water hole, and it's a very good frequency for doing EHF work with radar and such. Then recently, very recently, they announced specific bands with specific auction mechanisms, and they are 24.25 to 24.45. Notice how close that is to something that we use. And then a little bit further up, 24.75 to 25.5. I think they left a hole in here for police radars and stuff. So we got an adjacent band right here that they're going to start using. This is the 35 gig threat. There's an entire gigahertz there. And then bingo, 47.2 to 48.2. And our band is 47.0 to 47.2. So there's going to be adjacent channels to this band on 5G cell towers and 5G phones all over the place. Oh, yeah. They're nice people. They have engineers who have never seen a tree, who are going to, who know that you just need a cell tower every 3 miles until they get to New England, where this stuff doesn't go through 7 maple leaves, and you end up with one down every 3 telephone poles. And that's a lot of little transmitters all over the place, and they're going to be cheap, and they might have a little bit of out-of-band stuff coming out of them. So what do? We better protect our band so that they don't take it too. That's the purpose of this whole thing. Anyway, here's the actual language. Blah, 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 47.2 to 48.2, blah, blah, blah. Who's got the most money? Come on. So actually, there's an advantage. There's advantages and disadvantages to these things, right? There always are. One of the big advantages is they're going to start making chips that make power at 47 gigahertz. Not these expensive things that only military people want. They're going to start making them cheap. They're going to make receivers that run in these bands. So there are going to be chips that come out, and that's going to be good. So it's not all bad. The question is, how do we hold on to what we've got? So one way to do it is to protect 47 gigs. So that's to use it, put all of your QSOs and your receive reports into your log. A lot of people don't even use logs anymore. Do it. Every time you beep, every time you say, let's just run a little test here, even if it's on the bench, a signal came out on the band, put it in your log. Okay? So what else do we want to do? Put on some beacons. Stimulate activity, and the beacons themselves actually produce activity. But it only matters if you put your beacon information in the log. I received a beacon today. I received a beacon today. I received a beacon today. And if you got a couple in your area, I received the other beacon today. All right? And then the idea is, build these things, use them as the thing that makes the 47 gig energy. You got to put 11 gigs into it because it's a quadrupler, and key it. And you've got a beacon. You got to put an antenna on. So it's just one piece of a whole bunch of things, but it's the piece that's kind of hard to get. But it's a quadrupler. It could be used on your bench, right? So if you want to use it as an LO multiplier in one of your radios, okay, there you go. If you need something, there was a lot of these little things going around for quite a few years. They came out of white boxes and other things that were triplers and quadruplers that went up to 38, 39 gigahertz. And a lot of people use them, including me, in their 78 gig radios, and they use them for different sources and good things on the bench. Those are pretty much dried up. They're very hard to find now, okay? So the idea here is, if this is wider band, then maybe you could use it for a wider range of frequencies for doing all different kinds of LOs for 122 or 134 or 221. The real RF bands where real people get on the air and, get that kilometer. The first one counts. Okay, so why are beacons used? We all know why beacons are used, right? You want to study and understand enhancement, really. You want to, when you're hilltopping, you want to set your azimuth and get your frequency right. You want to figure out your receiver. So beacons are good things. We use them on the lower bands. Why not have them at 47? There's almost nobody that has any 47 gig beacons. Let's do that. Okay. This was I actually got a picture the first time my 47 gig radio worked. It was across the parking lot. And it took a while to get it to work, but it did. This is just a piece of New England from a funny viewpoint. My new home is very close to the Marconi site in a place called FN51, which is a rare grid. And I hope to be lighting that up. But, even in a place like New England, you could use a dozen 47 gig beacons and still not completely cover it, because you're not going to get a lot of distance out of these things. So we need a bunch of them. And this is a setup where I'm looking at from a good spot to another hilltop looking for a signal, and if I had a good beacon somewhere, I would have been able to know that my 47 gig radio was working properly and I knew which way to point. Fortunately, I had some 78 on the ground. Fortunately, I had good sun that day, as you can see from the flare in the camera, and I could get a pretty good bearing. So, what about the design? The idea was this. There are a couple of nice Hittite parts which are doublers, okay? So let's take two doublers, put a little blah blah between them and after them, and out comes your 47 gig snot. And you need a bias board, and fortunately these things exist, so they do all the work for you. Unfortunately, when you're 80% done, you've got 50% left to do, and you got to figure out how to get these things all right. So that's what I spent most of my time doing is that. And of course, designing a block and getting somebody to make the block. I'll talk about that in a second. So here are the parts. The HMC 578 and the HMC 579, they both take 5 volts. Yes. They don't have any negative supplies. Yes. The output of this is about the right level to hit this. Ooh, somebody was thinking. So this is a little bit high in frequency for its output, but it turns out it goes low. If you look at all the spec sheets, it actually goes lower, so it actually covers all that you want to hit this thing with. And this thing it says it stops at 46 gigahertz, but it doesn't. So it was worth a try. This is the block. If you're looking down at something here, where in a split block design, you have 2 halves of the block, and the bottom is where you put all your electronics, and the bottom half of the waveguide is milled out of that piece, and the top half is milled out of this piece. You put them together, and you get a piece of waveguide, and it all works out nicely. Anyway, this is the bias board. Okay, these are 0402. No, you can't even see the 0402s in here. This is the RF path. This big thing here is an SMA connector. This is the doubler. This is a attenuator. This is a bandpass filter. This is the second doubler. This is the bandpass filter. This is the waveguide probe, E-plane probe. There you go. It's that simple.
Question.
Yeah.
Output on the second doubler, do you need a filter there, or you can take that off and get harmonic, higher frequency?
I don't think it makes any harmonics at higher frequency, but yeah, you could certainly short it out. You could go in there and short it out, or we could do that for you if you want one of these. Yeah, it's not supposed to. They say that it doesn't, but hey. And this was the first trial. This is the second doubler. Just to try things out, I got a 3.5 millimeter input, and I think a 2.4 output, and a special waveguide transition there, so I could hook it into test instrumentations at 47, and this is 22 in, which you can get through some SMA connectors even, and it worked pretty good. But to get an idea of how big this is, that's an SMA connector there. You see, nice. It looks like an N connector on the board, doesn't it? Anyway, that's an SMA connector, and down here is where things are going on, and that's magnified. There's the chip, and there are 2 chip capacitors, and there's some wire bonding in and out. When I took this picture, I said, that's interesting. That I've seen, how you sometimes see a picture of something and you think, I've seen that before. It might just be a blue thing with a red dot in it. I've seen that before. Where is it, a popsicle? And I saw it and I said, I've seen that before. Where was that? This is a lunar eclipse taken by a flat earther. Came out pretty good. Anyway, so designs are designs, but you have to make it work, right? I've got it with me, the first unit. I'll let it go around. Please don't put more than 5,000 volts on those input DC bias pins. So it had to be made, and had to make it work. And engineer rings are an example. So what are the results of making it work? First of all, had to build it, and it built nicely. This is let me tell you something. The specs of the part say that it can put out as much as plus 15 dBm. Okay, but that's if it's in band, and we want to use it out of band. We want to use it at 47, not at 40, whatever that's made to work at. Furthermore, I wanted to make it broadband. I wanted to sell a few other things, and so I was hoping for 15 dBm. But as the great philosopher Jagger once sang, you can't always get what you want. The question is, are we getting what we need? And I think so. So you can see the focus on getting 47 to come out of it nicely, in fact, worked. This is the 47 gig band right here. There's a little teeny bump, a little bit above 10 dBm. Unfortunately, the way I set up my analyzers, I can only look at the input frequency rather than have it on the screen as the output frequency, so I have to interpret these numbers. But anyway, that's 47092 with plus 10.5 dBm. And this is the low end of the band of what this thing's doing. It's falling off very rapidly after this point. So the lowest it puts out is right around 40.1, 40 gigahertz. Right around 40 gigahertz is where the output kind of starts falling off fast. And my instrumentation stopped at 50 gigahertz. There might be a little bit left after that. I don't know. So it's basically a quadrupler that takes 10 to 12.5 in and puts 40 to 50 out. And it's not falling off quite as rapidly up here at the 50 end, but like I say, I don't know what happens up there. I just didn't have the right setup at the time to look at that. So the one that's going around was a $1,200 machine job without plating. And I was mentioning this need to get this part done to Steve, Downey's Microwave, and he said, well, we've got somebody that does our machining for us, and he might be able to help you. So I sent the files to him, and a few months later he came back and said, well, I got these problems, and I told him what they were, and he went ahead and machined it. And is it as good as the $1,200 one? No. Is it good enough? Yes. So again, philosopher Jagger applies, and we found two little boo-boos, and they're easy to fix. And I think we're going to go with this, and it's way cheaper. So the next step is to make them for you guys, or for the amateur radio crowd. And the question is, am I insane, or am I just drunk? So one of my problems was that the 5-volt regulator chip, which was designed into the circuit 2 years ago, is hard to get now. So there's a 16-week back order on it. And usually when it's 16 weeks, that's infinity. That's what they put in. So we don't know what's going to happen there. We'll either get it or we'll get a substitute. The problem is there's an inversion on one of the lines and controlling it, and it's going to screw things up. But we'll figure it out. It's just in the bias system. It's not critical, except getting it. I've added up the total cost so far, and it looks like it's going to be about $250. And that's using my standard no profit, but you are going to pay me for, if I build 50 of these, it's going to pay me back for all of the actual money I actually spent on designing the thing in the first place. When you're ready to take orders, I will notify everyone by the microwave email list. So most people are on that. People who aren't, know people who are. One way or another, there'll be notification. It'll also be on my website. So, and both of those are listed at the end of the paper, which is the last paper in the proceedings. So it's the very end of the end. That's where I normally am. And so I expect within the next couple of months to do this. Even though I'm working, I do have time for this kind of stuff, and I have a couple of people to help me too. What do you do for other items to make this stuff work? You need an antenna of some sort. Fan antenna is the best. Even though this looks like it, it will squirt out at a wide angle here. It doesn't. It squirts out at a wide angle here and a narrow angle here, but just the way antennas work. Slots, Alfred slots, whatever, they're very, very hard to make it at Q-band, so I don't recommend it. But even just an open waveguide will give you, close to 180 degrees of beam, and might work out as a good starting point. And since you can probably throw this in somebody's attic or on a tower, maybe in a box of some sort, it's a good starting point. And it's probably easy to machine these out of standard stock. Paul Wade's been doing some things with machining to inexpensively make horns, so I would ask him if he's got anything that'll work. You can make your own keyer pretty easily. There's plenty of keyers around. Here's one of these Arduinos that will fit on your thumbnail and actually has a USB thing built into it to plug into your computer to download your software. And WA1MBA has built some of these. And if you want power, it is available today. It's a 2-watt amplifier chip. Good luck. There's clearly a ham working there at Quaro, is it now, or something? Yeah, because the thing's only spec'd for 45 gigs. It's spec'd for this part of the band here. Why did he keep going in some of his measurements?
Maybe he was thinking that FCC thing.
No. No, he's thinking of hams, you know it. So it rolls off fast, but it still does cover 47. But anyway, that's a lot of money. I think after the 5G starts rolling out, there'll probably be much cheaper amplifiers, and they'll probably have to be up in this power level for the base station.
It's going to be a tough act to follow, Tom. Your background turned out very nice.
This is normally called a sunset, but some of the early scientists from 150 years ago or so called this light, they called it crepuscular waves or crepuscular rays. Crepuscular. I'd never seen that word before. I ran across it at a Starbucks where they had a daily trivia question. I run across Starbucks every day. And so I said, wow, I think I looked that up in Wikipedia. And they showed that there's not only crepuscular rays, there are also anti-crepuscular waves. Don't cross the red and the blue lines. It turns out that it's not antimatter. It's the other side of the viewing sphere. This is, of course, west. So if I looked east during a sunset, there is a slight chance I will see things called anti-crepuscular rays. And I work in Kansas, and a week ago, I saw this. This is looking east, away from the sunset. There are these apparent rays. It turns out that they're parallel lines. They just look like they're converging because of perspective. And if you look that up in Wikipedia, it'll tell you how that happens or whatever. Kind of cool. How far from Nebraska? I'm just off of Kansas City in Lenexa, just south of Kansas City. But that's where I work. That's not where I live. I live in New England, work in Kansas. This is the modern era. So, questions? That's right. Oh, we got a question. Good.
Tom, did you attempt to use a tuner or something to increase the power output at a narrower range?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. I have not. I think I have a WR22 EH tuner. I might just give that a try. That sounds like a good idea. I don't hold out much hope, but it sounds like a good idea. I mean, a few more dB is a few more dB, right? Sure. It's if there's a cheap way to do it with a screw and a waveguide, then, absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
You mentioned keeping logs of everything we're doing on these bands. Do you have any plans for those? Like, the only logs I've ever been asked for are contest sponsors. Is someone going to accumulate them at some point?
There will eventually be some, assuming that there are eventually going to be some attempts to modify our use of the band, then there will be a notification and there will be lots of splatter on the microwave reflector about it, and then there will be a gathering. And the ARRL is pretty good at gathering stuff, and they've got lawyers that make those really nice front pages with the right-hand parentheses all over it and all that kind of stuff. Last time 78 was there was a battle. Myself and a few others, hams, submitted affidavits of various sorts, and I think it helped a little bit. At least we stayed on the band. They did decrease our power level, but we'll see if that holds very long. But yes, if you have logs, then you can put those logs into PDFs and attach them to submissions, which are responses to an FCC proposed ruling. And there will be lots of notification when that's about to happen. There's someone over here and over there. Yeah.
Thoughts about using LOTW? I mean, you won't get matches if you're copying a beacon, but you can certainly list the QSO, date, time, your location, upload them into LOTW. Possibility, it'll be a common central point, and they will accept all the bands. They've got the centimeter bands as a band validity. So just a thought.
That's a great thought. I hadn't thought that myself because I don't know much about these new ways of logging. So I would suggest doing that. Absolutely. LOTW. And if you don't know enough about it, then look it up, get a reference, or call another ham that might.
Maybe a presentation in the future?
Could be another presentation coming up. Yeah, you never know. Yes.
With regard to that and the FCC would have a rulemaking, and then whoever is interested can file comments, individual comments, or through the ARRL, or if the ARRL attorneys think it's a good idea, do both. But it's important to have a record, a paper trail, so to speak, so that you can prove that you use this band and that you will be potentially, for want of a better word, harmed if the 5G people get to use the band or interfere with you, especially if they interfere with you. Because remember, amateurs are licensed, radio amateurs have a licensed service, not an unlicensed service like Wi-Fi or something like that, but it is a license that we have, so therefore we are afforded rights by the FCC.
Right, very good.
We may not have any
well
money
put.
with lawyers, but we're afforded rights. Thank you.
Well put. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's a good outline of the process. If you have any evidence, like filled out logs, like photographs, whatever, that indicates activity of any and all sorts, including reception, then that does hold some weight when you submit a response to a proposal for a ruling. Any others? Yep.
In terms of beacon spotting and all that, there is beaconspot.eu, which is a database that's collected run by the UK microwave group. You can also cross-spot, or you just spot it to the DX cluster, and it will show up in the record globally. So it's a quick way of having a record, even if it's across the bench. You spotted your own beacon. Put it down.
Yeah, very good point. So that creates a record in the cloud, so to speak, or in other databases where then you could access that and actually have a record that shows that you've done something. So there you go. One more.
Might be a little bit off topic, but your oblique shot of Massachusetts there and showing where your location is on Cape Cod is. Do you go around MCC's site? And I know there's very little left, like one concrete foundation. Is that still there, or is that washed away now too?
There's a foundation, yep, and there's a nice visitor center, and there's a place there's a platform where you can set up your 10 gig radio, and say, I'm part of an event here for Marconi. Oh, okay. Do you know what happened to Marconi when he got old? You know what happened to Marconi when he got old? Well, before that. He spent the last few years of his life trying to figure out how to receive the Sermon on the Mount. He did. But he was trying really hard to do something. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tom.